Republican Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado says the president made the right decision. He's chairman of the Foreign Relations Subcommittee on East Asia, the Pacific, and International Cybersecurity Policy. Senator Gardner is with us from Denver. Good morning, Senator. Let's start with why this deal fell apart. You say it was the right thing for the president to do. Why was it the right thing for the president to do?
Well, I think we've known all along that if there was any sense that Kim Jong Un was not committed to denuclearization, this meeting wouldn't occur. And in the weeks leading up to the summit, meetings were canceled. We had State Department officials meeting in Singapore with North Korean officials. Those meetings were canceled. Phone calls were not returned. They canceled meetings with the South Koreans. And so I think it's appropriate to make sure that when we get to this summit, it's not about games. It's not about propaganda. It's about denuclearization. Isn't
this why these summits, though, are worked out beforehand at a lower level so that you don't have national prestige at stake between the leaders this early in the negotiating process? Because obviously North Korea is not going to say, yeah, we'll give up the entire program right off the bat.
Well, I think what's happened is that those planning efforts were being made. If you look at the meeting that was going to be held in Singapore, that was all leading up to the summit in Singapore. And so phone calls that weren't returned, they were going to be planning efforts for Singapore. I think what happened over the past couple of weeks, Kim Jong Un either started to lack the support within his closest confidants, the old guard perhaps putting pressure on him, saying this isn't the way your father did things, you can't do this, or maybe even the meeting with President Xi, as has been talked about publicly, changed the results a little bit of Kim Jong Un's attitude as it related to the summit. Did China try to bring him in a little bit closer and saying, hey, we're nervous about making a deal with the Americans, and so we'll relax the sanctions? Those are all questions that we have to have answers for. We have to continue our maximum pressure doctrine, but I hope that we can get back to a position where we do indeed have a deal on denuclearization.
Senator, I want to talk about just how damaging this may be to the U.S. position. As you referred to, there was a White House Deputy Chief of Staff waiting in Singapore for North Korean officials and was stood up by the North Koreans. But now the North Koreans have gotten public recognition. They may get an easing of sanctions. They can continue with their nuclear program. And doesn't this just strengthen China in the end?
Well, to be clear, there will be no easing of sanctions. In fact, the commitment that I received yesterday from the Secretary of State, I was at the White House meeting with National Security Advisor Bolton. We will double down on our sanctions. In fact, Congress is prepared to pass additional sanctions legislation that I've put in place called the LEAD Act. It's already out of the Foreign Relations Committee, just needs to move through the full Senate now in the House. We can double down on these sanctions to further isolate North Korea economically and diplomatically, to continue to ratchet up our pressure. But I don't think this is any kind of a win for North Korea. In fact, this fits a pattern of misbehavior. His promises by his family have been broken over the decades, many times. And so this isn't anything new. What we see is an internal challenge and struggle between Kim Jong Un, a challenge between this peacemaker to bring his hermit kingdom out of the darkness, and this challenge, the struggle between the propagandist, a pattern of behavior by North Korea that gets global attention, and then they break the promise. And in this instance, it looks like the propagandist won over in that internal debate.
All right. Senator Gardner, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.